Love, Lost, Rebirth, Alive. Blue Dolphins. The novel. By Makāula Nakae. Chapter 4, Aumākua, Guardian Spirit Episode 15. Makana. Gifts. The stillness of the museum garden shattered as the memory surged back, unbidden and raw. In the clinical white silence of that hospital room, Hanalei had gripped Kevin's hand, the salt of his own tears stinging his skin. "You promised you wouldn't leave me like this." He had kept his gaze fixed on their interlaced fingers, unable to look up. He couldn't bear to see the motionless face of his beloved. To look at Kevin's closed eyes, to see the chest that no longer rose and fell, was to invite the finality of death into his heart. "Hanalei, Kevin is gone," Kevin's mother had whispered, her hand a heavy weight on his shoulder. "I can't believe it, he can't leave me. He just can't." It felt like a lie. A cruel, elaborate nightmare. When his friend tried to pull him away, Hanalei lunged back, clinging to the body. But as his skin met Kevin's, the reality of the physical world struck him like a blow. The warmth of life, that vibrant, pulsing heat, had evaporated. In its place was a cold, waxy texture that felt almost wet. "No, this cold shell isn't him," Hanalei had cried out, his eyes darting around the room in a panic. "This isn't him. He wasn't this cold." He backed away from the bed, his mind fracturing. If Kevin wasn't in that body, he had to be somewhere else. He scanned the corners of the room, looking into the empty air, searching for a flicker of light or a familiar shadow. "Where are you? Why can't I see you?" "Hanalei, please." Kevin's father was sobbing now, but Hanalei couldn't hear him over the roar in his own ears. "I know he's gone, but he couldn't do this. He promised we'd survive together." His friend had eventually dragged his frozen, resisting body into the hallway, but Hanalei continued to scream into the void, pleading with the air as if Kevin were just out of reach. Hiding behind a veil he couldn't quite tear down. Suddenly, the sharp, rhythmic trill of a phone cut through the memory. Hanalei leaped from his bed, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was tangled in his white sheets, gasping for air, the sunlight of the present moment fighting against the sterile white light of the hospital room that still burned in his mind. He sat there, clutching the fabric of his bed, waiting for the pounding in his chest to subside, realizing the earthquake Coco had described was still shaking the foundations of his world. Hanalei gripped the phone, the plastic cold against his ear as the echo of his nightmare faded into the quiet of his room. "Hello," he whispered, his voice still thick with the residue of the hospital room. "Hanalei, it's me." The voice belonged to Kevin's mother. Despite the miles between Hawaii and her home in Linwood, just north of Seattle, her presence felt immediate. He could almost see her gentle face, etched with the same kind of enduring grace he had seen in Lilino earlier that day. "Good morning, Mom. How are you? Are you doing well?" He forced his voice to climb an octave, trying to layer a veneer of cheerfulness over the hollow ache in his chest. "We're fine. How about you?" Her voice searched his. "We were worried because we hadn't heard from you lately. Are you doing well? How's your health?" "I'm fine. I've made a few good friends here, so I'm okay. I'm doing well." The words felt like a script he was reading for an audience of one. "I'm trying to be okay," he thought. "I just don't want to worry you. Are you seeing anyone?" "No, just good friends." That part, at least, was the truth. Jim, Coco, Douglas, they were anchors, but they weren't Kevin. The idea of someone replacing the space Kevin occupied felt like a physical impossibility, a violation of the laws of his own heart. "Hanalei, you need to move forward," she pleaded, her voice cracking slightly. "I know it's hard to forget, but you must. You need to find someone to be happy with. Otherwise, seeing you like this, it will make it impossible for Kevin to be happy in heaven. I know it was his last wish. But I just can't yet. I don't know if I can ever forget. Should I even try? Or is it something that just fades, like an old photograph left in the sun?" To Hanalei, the memory was still as sharp as a fresh cut. "I understand," she said softly. But we want you to be happy again. And sometimes show us your happy face. How can I show a happy face? Hanalei wondered as the call ended. I can't imagine a new lover. I don't even want to think about it. He sat on the edge of the bed, the white sheets tangled around his legs. The silence of the room rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. He didn't know what to do with the advice of a mother who was grieving her own son, yet trying to save his partner. I can't think about it. I just can't. On a crisp Sunday morning, the air at Queen's Surf Beach held the lingering coolness of the departing rainy season, though the sun was beginning to assert its warmth. The stretch of sand was a sea of bodies, more crowded than usual as men gathered to bronze their skin in anticipation of the upcoming big event. Hanalei and Jim stood near the water's edge, scanning the crowd for Stephen. Is he coming? Jim asked, his curiosity piqued by the prospect of a new face in their routine. He said he would last week, Hanalei replied, adjusting his goggles. He has my number, so he'd call if he changed his mind. He explained to Jim that it was Stephen who had initiated the connection, striking up a conversation while Hanalei was at the kiosk. Just as the words left his mouth, Stephen materialized through the crowd, looking slightly winded. Sorry I'm late. Parking was a nightmare, he panted. Before they could settle into a greeting, Coco appeared behind him like a sudden tropical breeze. I'm joining you for a swim today, she announced, her presence adding a splash of unexpected energy to the group. The four of them moved through the maze of lounging men toward the shoreline. The atmosphere was charged with the vanity and social hum of a busy weekend. Jim stopped at the water's edge, pointing out the course. We'll swim back and forth, from wall to wall, Jim directed. How many laps? Coco asked, eyeing the distance. At least 2, Jim replied. He was mentally measuring the stretch between the competition wall and the breakwater. For regulars like Jim and Hanalei, 2 laps was a standard baseline. But for Coco, or Stephen, if he wasn't a consistent swimmer, it would be a legitimate test of endurance. It might be tough, Coco said, looking out at the turquoise reef, but I'll try. The transition from land to sea is a shift in physics. On land, the body relies on gravity and the solid resistance of the earth. In the water, every movement must be recalibrated. A swimmer's skill is immediately evident in the fluidity of their stroke, the way they work with the water rather than fighting against it. Those unfamiliar with the ocean often flail, their arms and legs moving in stiff, uncoordinated bursts that consume oxygen and create unnecessary drag. Jim and Hanalei moved with the ease of men who had made the ocean their second home. They swam ahead, stopping halfway to tread water and look back. Stephen followed with determined but awkward movements, his body rigid with tension. Behind him, Coco's strokes were a bit more textbook in form, yet they lacked the rhythmic flow of a seasoned athlete. Are you okay? Can you keep up? Hanalei called out as Coco approached. Her stroke was somewhat robotic, a series of deliberate movements that hadn't yet become muscle memory. I'm fine, she replied, catching her breath. How about you, Stephen? I'm good, Stephen panted. It's definitely different from swimming in a pool. Of course, Hanalei responded. The waves make the surface unpredictable, and the salt changes your buoyancy. In the sea, even calm water requires a constant, subconscious adjustment of balance that a flat pool never demands. They resumed their course, with Jim and Hanalei reaching the competition wall first. Jim floated on his back, stretching his hamstrings against the stone, while Hanalei dove toward the seabed. He scanned the crevices of the coral rocks, searching for the sinuous movement of an eel or the flash of a tropical fish. Finally, Stephen reached the wall and ripped off his goggles, his face flushed. Good job, Jim praised. It was tough, but I think I can manage 2 laps, Stephen said, his chest heaving. Hanalei nodded encouragingly. I was a wreck when I first started swimming here. You'll find your rhythm. However, as they began the return leg toward the breakwater, Coco reached her limit. The mechanical effort of her strokes was beginning to fail against the steady pull of the current. She lifted her head, treading water, and waved a hand to signal the men. "I don't think I can keep up," she shouted across the water. "I'm going to head back to shore. You three finish your laps, I'll be waiting on the beach." As Coco drifted toward the shore, the gentle push of the tide guided her back to the shallows. Just as her feet touched the soft silt of the seabed, a glint caught her eye, a sharp metallic flash amidst the rolling grains of white sand. She dipped her face back into the water, her eyes searching the shifting floor. As the wave surged and retreated, a half-buried golden object revealed itself. She scooped it up, the weight of it surprising her, and rinsed away the grit in the clear seawater. It was a thick gold band, unadorned by the intricate scrolls of typical Hawaiian heirloom jewelry. Instead, it featured a raised, square crown engraved with a bold letter K, its corners softened by the relentless polishing of the Pacific. It looked as though it had been waiting in the sand for a long time, a lost secret finally resurfacing. She slipped it onto her middle finger, but it hung loose. When the men finally emerged from the surf, Stephen gasping for air and Jim offering a steadying hand, Coco hurried over to Hanalei. "Look what I found," she said, holding the ring up to the tropical sun. "Wow, lucky find," Hanalei remarked, squinting at the metal. "It looks like solid 14 karat. Without a word, Coco took Hanalei's right hand and slipped the ring onto his finger. It was slightly loose, but it sat there with a strange, heavy presence. The wet gold sparkled, the K catching the light with a sharp, insistent brilliance. Hanalei stared at it. The letter K felt like a physical weight. K for Kevin. The thought flickered through his mind like a ghost, but he pushed it away, removing the ring and placing it back into Coco's palm. "It's lovely, but you found it?" he said, his voice a bit strained. "You should take it to a jeweler and have it resized for yourself. Maybe today's just your lucky day," Stephen added with a light-hearted smile, still trying to catch his breath from the swim. Jim, however, was already looking past the discovery toward the next highlight of the day. "Let's head to Hula's for cocktails later." On Sunday afternoons, Hula's bar and lei stand was the heart of the Waikīkī social scene, legendary for its tea dance where the music spilled out over the ocean. It was a place of high energy and distraction, exactly what Jim thrived on. "Sorry, I have plans," Coco declined, her expression softening as she mentioned her mother. She quickly excused herself to the changing rooms. Stephen and Hanalei, both parched and lacking any better agenda, agreed to Jim's plan. As they walked toward the showers, the image of the gold K remained burned into the back of Hanalei's mind. A quiet resonance that no amount of seawater could wash away. To be continued. Love, Lost, Rebirth, Alive. Blue Dolphins the Novel. By Makāula Nakae. Swim and listen to the historical gay drama in the center of the Pacific. We are releasing a brand new episodes every Sunday midnight until the epic conclusion of the story. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 15 to 45-minute hit of cinematic historical drama set in the tropical islands of Hawaii, the perfect daily plunge into the shattered world a millennium after 9/11. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full novel now. Bookmark Blue Dolphins. The Novel Playlist, A Great Argead Saga, Alexine, Volume 1. Talesius Playlist. Volume 2, Sacred Band Playlist, and Divine Oracle. Unwritten words behind my novel playlist. Subscribe to follow the waves and currents of Forbidden Paradise love tales. Comment below.